Yeah, I have a clip of it.
Oh, okay, great.
Her being a retard.
Okay.
It's no longer 1937, and we absolutely wrote a Snow White.
That laugh.
That is
not going to be saved by
You
the
wrote
prince.
it?
She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be.
All right, gather around, my glamorous gossip gourmands, because if you thought the tea had finished brewing on this Snow White saga, think again. Your girl Madison is back with an extra-large triple-shot latte of Hollywood horror, because the rabbit hole of this cinematic catastrophe goes deeper than a Beverly Hills Botox appointment. We're not just talking about a flop, darlings. We're talking about a full-blown, A-list level implosion that's got the whole industry whispering in hushed tones and studios frantically rewriting their crisis management playbooks. So, buckle up those designer seatbelts, because this ride is about to get even bumpier.
That said, our primary purpose is to entertain, and where we can entertain responsibly, obviously we try to do that. We try to have a positive impact on the world, but the first thing we need to do is entertain.
There was an in-depth piece, like a behind-the-scenes piece, talking about how they've been in a full meltdown about this girl for a couple of years now.
Okay, lovelies, pause real quick. Hit subscribe, because the tea I'm serving today is caliente and getting hotter. And you know your girl always gets the receipts first. We left off with AMC basically giving Disney the cinematic equivalent of a polite but firm no thank you, yanking that live-action Snow White faster than you can say bippity-boppity-boo-bye. And let's be real, that move sent shockwaves through Hollywood that could probably register on the Richter scale. Disney, the behemoth, the titan, the very definition of box office success, getting the cold shoulder from a major theater chain, it's like finding out Beyonce can't carry a tune. Unthinkable. The sheer audacity of AMC's decision speaks volumes, doesn't it? We're not talking about some indie flick that barely registered on the cultural radar. This was Disney, Snow White, a property so ingrained in our collective consciousness, it's practically a national treasure. And yet, the empty seats were so deafening, the lack of interest so palpable, that AMC essentially said, we'd rather show static. Okay, maybe not static, but you get the picture.
But the primary suffering is being sent in by my company to watch a children's movie as a single man, like 2 p.m. on a Thursday. That was the first part that was a little bit weird, but I was basically the only person in the theater.
You don't particularly see people who, look like me or are me playing roles like that. So it was definitely, when it got announced,
White!
He wasn't a stalker, by the way.
Thing that was like trending on Twitter for days because all of the people were angry.
Lost revenue is the ultimate Hollywood heartbreak, and continuing to screen this film was apparently akin to throwing good money after a very, very bad apple. Those theaters could have been filled with paying customers eager to see the latest superhero blockbuster, the next animated sensation, or even, dare I say, a rom-com that doesn't involve a talking dog. The opportunity cost was simply too high. And you know what's truly mind-boggling? Disney threw the kitchen sink at this project. Rachel Zegler, a fresh face with undeniable talent, was meant to be the modern embodiment of this classic princess. And Gal Gadot? Hello! Wonder Woman, she could probably sell ice to an Eskimo, yet even her considerable star power couldn't pull this cinematic sleigh out of the snowdrift. It's like they had all the right ingredients for a gourmet meal, but somehow managed to burn it to a crisp. The controversies, oh honey, the controversies. They were like some never-ending soap opera, each episode more dramatic and cringeworthy than the last. The meltdown on live television, we're still not over it, are we? It's the kind of moment that will live on in internet infamy for years to come. Right up there with that kid who ate the microphone. And then you had the whispers from behind the scenes, the kind of juicy gossip that makes your ears perk up and your fingers fly across the keyboard to your group chat. Cast member drama, alleged feuds. Oh, Hollywood, you never disappoint. Every little tidbit, every leaked story just added another layer to this already towering cake of chaos. And the fans, they were not amused. They took to social media like digital pitchfork-wielding mobs, their disappointment and anger echoing across the internet.
And so it was like
Those people.
very much this, yes. It was this
people that
awakening
we need
of-
to educate, the people that we need to love into awareness.
love them in the right direction.
Disney's promotional campaign promised us a fresh take, a modern reimagining. And while some might argue they certainly delivered on the reimagined part, perhaps a little too much for some tastes, the fresh part, well, let's just say it smelled more like week-old leftovers than a newly baked pie. Rachel Zegler, initially hailed as a promising talent, found herself at the center of a storm. And Gal Gadot, despite her best efforts to bring some much-needed sparkle, was seemingly caught in the crossfire. It's a classic Hollywood tragedy, really. And so with a swiftness that surprised absolutely no one who had been following this train wreck, AMC pulled the plug. It was a mercy killing for a movie that was clearly on its last legs. Industry commentators, those insightful souls who get paid to analyze these things, were left scratching their heads and offering a plethora of theories. Was it fatigue with Disney's constant remakes? Had they finally crossed the line with this particular beloved story? Or was it the perfect storm of controversial casting, outspoken stars, and a PR strategy that seemed to be operating on a different planet than reality? The answer, my dears, is likely a delicious cocktail of all of the above. The film's dismal box office performance, amplified by a relentless barrage of negative publicity, simply made it financially impossible for AMC to justify keeping it on their screens. It was a business decision, pure and simple, albeit a rather dramatic one. The tale of this once promising movie's spectacular descent into flopdom has become a cautionary narrative whispered in studio boardrooms and debated on industry podcasts. It's a reminder that even the biggest brands, the most beloved stories, aren't immune to the wrath of a disappointed audience. And speaking of podcasts, Joe Rogan, that purveyor of all things controversial and thought-provoking, depending on your perspective, of course, dedicated a significant chunk of his airtime to dissecting the cinematic disaster. When Joe Rogan is dedicating a monologue to your movie's failure, honey, you know you've hit rock bottom. Rogan, in his signature, often unfiltered style, emphasized that AMC's decision was more than just a scheduling change. It was a cultural bellwether, a sign that the tides are turning. Audiences armed with social media and a newfound willingness to voice their opinions are showing that brand loyalty and nostalgia aren't enough to guarantee success anymore. The meltdown, oh yes, that glorious train wreck of a meltdown, had become the defining characteristic of this entire project, overshadowing any artistic merit it might have possessed. And let's be honest, the jury was still very much out on that. Rogan, bless his analytical heart, meticulously laid out the sequence of unfortunate events. He started with the initial casting of Rachel Zegler, which in theory had a lot of potential. A talented newcomer bringing a fresh perspective to a classic role, what's not to like? But then came the whispers, the leaks, the subtle and not so subtle changes to the story that sent alarm bells ringing for diehard fans. The shift away from a faithful retelling to a reimagined narrative, that phrase still makes me twitch, sparked a wave of skepticism and, frankly, outrage. People started asking if Disney was trying to fix something that wasn't broken, if their attempts to modernize the story were actually just a way of pandering or, worse, disrespecting the original. And then, of course, there was Rachel Zegler's very public persona. Her comments, often interpreted as dismissive of the original story's charm and enduring appeal, acted like a catalyst, accelerating the already brewing backlash. Fans felt like she was not only starring in a version of Snow White they didn't want, but also actively looking down on those who loved the classic. It was a PR nightmare waiting to happen. Furious comments flooded social media, transforming Zegler from a promising newcomer into a lightning rod for fan frustration. Disney, in a desperate attempt to quell the rising storm, orchestrated a series of talk show appearances. The hope was that Zegler could charm the audience, address their concerns, and somehow reassure them that this new version still honored the spirit of the original. But, as we all know, things didn't exactly go according to plan. Rachel Zegler's independent spirit, while perhaps admirable in other contexts, clashed spectacularly with Disney's tightly controlled messaging. Her social media posts, often defiant and unapologetic, further fueled the controversy. Critics argued her tone was condescending, while supporters championed her right to speak her mind. Regardless, the clash between the outspoken star and the corporate giant became the central drama, completely overshadowing the actual movie. And as the whispers of box office doom grew louder, Disney executives were likely reaching for the strongest antacids they could find. Bob Iger's return to Disney was supposed to be a moment of stability, a steady hand on the rudder during a turbulent time. He had a reputation for navigating tricky situations, but even he seemed to be struggling to steer this particular ship away from the iceberg. The studio's crisis management strategy felt disjointed, reactive rather than proactive, like they were constantly playing catch-up in a game they were already losing. And then the piece de resistance, the moment that will forever be etched in Hollywood history, the meltdown on The View. Oh, honey, this was reality TV gold, the kind of unscripted drama you just can't make up. Disney's PR team likely envisioned a friendly chat, a chance for Rachel Zegler to connect with a mainstream audience and smooth things over. Instead, they got a live, unedited explosion of opinions that went completely off the rails. The instructions given to the View's production staff were likely very specific, outlining preferred talking points and topics to avoid. But Rachel Zegler, it seems, had her own script. Her desire to discuss unrelated political matters and her apparent disinterest in sticking to the studio-approved narrative created immediate tension. The producer's attempts to steer her back on course were palpable, the awkwardness radiating from the screen like heat from a desert mirage. During that fateful live broadcast, her statements about the original story being outdated and the need for audiences to embrace change were perceived by many fans as a direct insult. It was like she was telling them their cherished childhood memories were irrelevant. The backlash on social media was instantaneous and brutal. And then the meltdown. Eyewitness accounts paint a picture of frantic off-camera activity as producers desperately tried to regain control. But Ziegler stood her ground, doubling down on her controversial remarks. The segment spiraled out of control so quickly that even the seasoned hosts of The View were visibly flustered, desperately trying to fill the dead air. The abrupt cut to a commercial break only amplified the drama, and the partial clips and secondhand accounts that immediately flooded the internet ensured that this moment would forever be associated with the film. It became meme fodder, late-night talk show material, and the ultimate symbol of the film's disastrous PR campaign. Joe Rogan rightly labeled it a PR catastrophe. Disney didn't just lose control of the narrative, they lost it in the most public and humiliating way possible. The damage control that followed was intense, but the meltdown had taken on a life of its own, becoming a rallying cry for those who felt betrayed by this new Snow White. Critics saw it as confirmation of Zegler's unsuitability for the role, while her few remaining supporters argued she was simply being authentic. The fiasco completely overshadowed Gal Gadot, who was supposed to bring star power and credibility to the project. The rumors of friction between the two actresses only added to the perception of a production in disarray. Gadot's carefully neutral statements did little to quell the storm. Social media erupted with the "Not My Snow White" hashtag, and the opening weekend box office numbers were a disaster. AMC's decision to pull the film was the inevitable culmination of this perfect storm of bad press and dwindling interest. It was a watershed moment, signaling a potential shift in the power dynamics between studios and audiences. Even Disney, the seemingly invincible House of Mouse, learned a harsh lesson about respecting beloved classics and managing outspoken stars. The meltdown on The View was the point of no return, the moment the film went from troubled to toxic, ensuring its place in Hollywood history as a cautionary tale for the aged. Okay, before I expose this whole situation even further, do your girl a favor and hit subscribe, because trust me, what's coming next? You're gonna need a seat and a fan. What are your thoughts on this whole Snow White mess? Did you see the meltdown? What do you think Disney should have done differently? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like and share this video with all your fellow pop culture fanatics. Until next time, stay fabulous, stay informed, and stay tuned for more juicy Hollywood scoops.